Welcome to Sales Bites. I'm Abby White. In this episode, we have got John Foong with us, Chief Revenue Officer at Domain. John has previously held roles at Uber, Google, McKinsey, and many others. And he talks to us about high growth sales strategies. He talks to us about being a Chief Revenue Officer and aligning sales and marketing for growth, and much, much more. So grab a pad, pen, coffee, and sit back and enjoy this episode. Before we get started on today's conversation, I wanted to let you know that we now have a wait list for our next intake of RevUp, which will be coming to you very, very soon. And RevUp, if you have not come across it before, is all about how do you bring together your revenue generating teams to collaborate and learn from the most epic lineup of speakers. So if that sounds of interest, check out the details in the show notes and you can pop your name on the waitlist and you'll be one of the first to hear when we open our doors again for our next cohort. I have been very, very excited about this one because you have quite the epic history and career history. And worked for some of the most phenomenal companies in the world. So I am really, really excited for our audience to just try and pull together some of the pieces and common threads and things that you've seen for success. So I'm going to dive straight in with that. So my understanding is you've worked with the likes of Uber, you've worked with Google, obviously now Domain. So you've worked with some really high growth, incredible companies. Have you spotted common themes for success, common themes for growth, common themes for high performance sales? Is there a common thread between those companies?
Yeah, there definitely is. And I would actually think the thread I see in these high performance companies on the sales side is it's a paradox. And the paradox is every great salesperson is unique. They have a way of connecting with the customer. They have a way of understanding the product. They bring their own particular stick, their own particular thing, to the table. And you want to make that amazing. You want to beautify that. You want to make sure that people understand that and feel the freedom to kind of sell and manage the customers as they see fit. But all great sales organizations ultimately scale through systems. And the way I think about bringing those paradoxes together is my job is to take the best bits of all the people I see out there, the way they connect with folks, the way they research the product, the way they manage their pipeline, and try and make that systemic so that when people come to the table, when people are here, we can bring the best out of them, but they can get the best out of everyone else as well.
So what do you think have been some of the most impactful sales strategies that you've built? Because you've just given us three very, very different examples, from Domain to Uber to Google, different stages of business, very, very different. What do you think have been some of the most impactful sales strategies that you've sort of deployed in your time?
Yeah, there's a few that comes to mind. I think that the biggest thing you can do is, invest in your people. And this is a theme I'll come back to. But the biggest sales strategy for me is having your people understand that you are investing in them. For me, I never dreamed I'd end up in sales. I like selling things, but I kind of fell into it. I was at Google for a while. I was in marketing, then I was in technical operations. And then a sales job came up. I thought, oh, yeah, maybe I could be a sales manager, and end up 15 years later. I love it. But for me, the reason I got into sales was not to be a lifelong salesperson, which is a great activity too, but as a stepping stone to senior leadership, to hopefully one day being a CEO. They often say the CEO is the chief sales officer. So for me, that's a big value proposition for myself, as sales is a way of learning. And I want to make sure that whoever works for me is one of the 300 sellers I have on my commercial team today, that they know they're getting an education. They feel like they're getting as much out of their experience with Domain as they are giving back to Domain and our customers. So number one, the biggest sales strategy is, do your people know they're getting value? And that's investing in training, investing in a methodology that will serve them, not just while they're with Domain or whatever company you're leading, but as long as they are in business, not even in sales, that they're going to become more marketable the more they work for you and the more they learn. But the sales strategy I invest the most is really actually influencing product and marketing. As a salesperson, I am nothing without having a great product and having a great audience that's been acquired by marketing. And so my biggest job actually as a chief revenue officer today at Domain is to make sure that our customers are getting what they need from our product and marketing departments. And I'm very much the conduit of that, of representing, of advocating, of trying to figure out how to get product and marketing the funding to create kick-ass products so those things are getting better and the value proposition is always improving. Those are actually the two primary sales strategies that I would encourage any person in sales to be employing. There are specific ones we can talk to as well, but they're the two big ideas.
How do you bring together sales and marketing? How do you end the great divide?
No, it's true, right? And particularly the product that I sell, which is, the power of the domain listing to help people find the next home and to help people selling their house find, potential buyers. It's nothing without audience. It's nothing without audience. All we are doing is bringing great buyers to the table to look at people's houses. And so that is the primary thing I'm selling when I meet out there with real estate agents and customers. And so the marketing is so important. So the first part is actually just having that mindset. I think a lot of sales leaders I met feel like they can control their own destiny. They can't. Actually, most of their destiny is laid out for them by the quality of their product and the quality of the audience. So number one, start with the mindset that actually sales is the bottom of the funnel. It's downstream from product and marketing. Therefore, it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have confidence in what's coming down to you, then you've really got nothing. Number two, I often ask an interview question, which is the following. How do you perform, or how do you get what you need when you have influence without authority? Right? Because this is what anyone in any matrix company, any large company to do. You don't control the chips unless you're the CEO, right? So you're always influencing someone else who doesn't have to do what you want them to do, right? And for me, the answer that I'm looking for is always the same. I want people to start with understanding what are the goals, what excites that other group. So I'm in sales, right? What do marketing care about? What do they care about professionally, personally? What are their goals? And two things will happen. Number one, when you put yourself in someone else's shoes, after having the mindset that they are important, you cannot help but develop empathy to go, oh, wow, actually, their job is really hard. Their marketing automation system is not quite up to scratch. They don't have anywhere the marketing dollars to do the kind of brand and performance marketing they want to do. It naturally develops empathy and you step into their world. But secondly, by actually saying, wow, what do I need to do to fulfill their goals? It will actually force the company to figure out, like, are sales and marketing goals actually aligned? Because to me, this is actually the biggest issue. What we need in a company is a single set of goals of which different functions take different parts of the funnel. But what you discover if you actually enter in, what are marketing's goals? What are my goals? Where do they overlap? And where do they actually contradict each other? You will then potentially come to the conclusion that actually we're not set up for success here. That actually there needs to be a CMO, a CRO, and a CEO conversation of can we get those goals aligned? Those two things, taking on that mindset of empathy and then actually trying to align those goals because you realize you have influence but not authority, that takes care of 80% of the work. Once you start there, it's very hard to not work together because our destinies are intertwined.
Do you think there's you've obviously been down that change path before, right? And you've been through for a few companies where you're kind of ahead of the curve on that change. Yeah. Have you found there's any common themes there around helping people adopt and embrace the change? Because as humans, it's that book of like, who moved my cheese? We don't always want the change, and change can feel scary and daunting. And like you said, particularly in industries where, well, it's always been this way and it's been this way since, years and years and years ago since we started. Have you found there's a common theme there around helping people to navigate change? Yeah.
I think as long as I'm working, I'll probably be in industries or jobs where there's change. I think it's what I grew up with. I've been at Google for 13 years, like just things constantly changing. New products, new markets, new competitors, new laws. All these things are causing change. So much so that I think change management is probably one of the prime skills that any executive brings to the table. Because there aren't too many companies that are standing still. Even if you're a bank or a grocery store, where you think, they've got change around digitization, legal, competitors coming to the market. What are they going to do? And so this currency, change management, I think is the thing where folks and your listeners need to keep getting good at. And so for me, my change management playbook is this. Number one, it starts with empathy. Recognize and imagine how hard it is to change. And we might think we're dynamic and young and like we're used to change and we love change. And I think a lot of great executives do. They see change as opportunity. But there are places where people that move our cheese, that scares us, whether it's moving house or a different life stage or our parents getting old or things like that. We are connected to things. And there are some things where we invite change, and there's some things where we're scared of it, where we like the security of the way things have been. So I think part number one is having the empathy to attach yourself to that and go, oh, yeah, I might be very happy to change systems because that's my thing. But imagine if someone thought about systems, how I feel about my family or my house or health or things of that nature. I think number two, change management also comes through trust. I said, people are making that equation of like, are the benefits of change outweighing the costs and the risks of change? And the way that people value those things is through a paradigm of trust. Do I trust the person who's talking about the benefits? And do I trust the person who's trying to mitigate those costs, that what they're saying is actually true? And so that's why I think relationship management, whether you are someone in sales trying to help a customer make a change, or whether you're someone in management trying to help someone who's been in your company make a change to a different methodology, a different way of selling, It starts with that currency of trust. Do they buy into you first, and then they'll buy into change? The last part is, of course, having a real framework for like how to de-risk it for people, laying out the steps, showing all the things that need to happen and how you're going to hold their hand that journey. I think a lot of what I learned as a consultant early in my career is to take a large problem and break into component parts. That's how things become solvable, and that's ultimately how you generate trust. Because even if this whole change is scary, the 50 steps that's underneath it, we can de-risk all of those, and it's still a risk, but it feels like less of a risk because we're doing 50 things we've done before rather than one big thing we've never done before. And so that's the journey, I think, of a leader, whether you're a leader as a salesperson leading a customer or whether you're a manager, leading your sales direct reports.
Change is the only constant, and it's therefore how do you navigate and how do you go through some of that path. And I think that's interesting that you just talked about and unpacked a little bit around building trust, because you've mentioned trust several times throughout this conversation as sort of being one of the keys. And it's interesting in the latest research that, you know, trust has always been, you know, one of the top things as sellers that we have to build. But even now it's showing it's even increased in importance, if it was even possible that it could increase in importance. So I think that's interesting that for you, that seems to be a common thread to most of your answers, is around actually starting with building trust.
Yeah, totally. And by the way, trust is not always interpersonal, right? So yes, typically you buy into the person before you buy into the product. But if I take Google, most interactions people with Google are not with a person, but there's a high degree of trust. There's a degree of trust that when you type a search query into the search box, that it's going to come back with high speed, high fidelity, and high authenticity. And a lot of the job of sales is to figure out when to generate trust through in-person interactions, when to generate trust through really quick phone or virtual interactions, and when to generate trust through self-serve or automated interactions as well.
What do you think it is for you, having seen all different types of sales teams? What do you think it is for you to help someone play a high-performance sales game?
Yeah. I remember when I was a consultant back at McKinsey many years ago, we had this framework for high performance, and it's stuck with me ever since. And there's basically 4 components, to how do you create a high performance team? And number 1 is role modeling. Basically, can people see other high performers around them, and are the high performers getting celebrated? And this is stuff like having a culture of having a leaderboard where you elevate people at the top, even simple things like newsletters or people sharing in all hands is what they've done. I think it's really important that people see role models, that people see that people progress. Like we talk about career development as a salesperson, but if people actually made the loop from sales assistant to account manager, to sales manager, director, to national director, when people see those role models around them, it really breeds a high performance culture. In the same way, like if you're in a tennis academy or Olympics academy and you see people who are in your shoes go to the Olympics or the Grand Slams, that gives you hope. Oh, well, I could do that no matter where I am today. I can perform my best. I can make that jump. Number 2 is actually around training. And it's something we heavily invest in here. We're working with a consulting company to generate a new methodology. We'll put everyone through, a multi-day training program customized just, for domain here. A lot of it is the signal of the investment that you are spending time and money investing in people. But a lot of it is just capability. Ultimately, wherever people are at, they can get better. They can get better through osmosis or through making errors. But a big part of getting better is just sharing best practice in a way that's engaging, repeated and tested. And that's how people get better. The third thing is systems. We talked about measurement before, and it's really, really important that people get that feedback of, oh, wow, I did this thing that was good. This has resulted in a better outcome for the business, and they can see themselves in real time. And that's why things such as whether it's Salesforce dashboards or Tableau dashboards or whatever you might use, and is not just having a proliferation of the right kind of metrics, but also different metrics at different stages. Obviously, we measure things such as dollars, but dollars are a very lag indicator. How do you measure pipeline, visits, calls? These are all things that provide that virtuous cycle of action, measurement, gratification. You're trying to build those habits, those psychological nudges, so that people are doing things that are in line with high performance, and you're just helping them, get into that virtuous cycle. And the last part is incentives, right? Ultimately, you need to understand where you're at the market. Are you like Google, which we aim to pay at the top 5%? Are you trying to pay in the top quartile, the top third of the market? Are you actually just trying to pay towards the bottom of the market, but really high rewards you do really well? Each of them have a different strategy. They're all legitimate. It depends on your corporate culture. But you have to make sure that the incentives test is this. Is there enough incentive for a high performer to stay with you? That's the question we're asking. Because if there isn't, they probably won't.
If you enjoyed that episode with John, you can go and check out the full episode. The link is in the show notes as well as John's details. As I mentioned at the start, if you are interested in joining us on our next intake of Rev Up, feel free to pop your name on the waitlist and we will let you know when doors open again soon.